Romance, passion, finding the one. These themes aren't just storytelling tropes or dating app slogans. They've become, for many, a form of faith. But what if I told you that modern romance has taken on the structure of a new religion? Something that defines meaning, identity, and moral codes. Let's dig into this. In modern culture, romance is often presented as this ultimate goal, a rite of passage that defines who we are and who we're meant to be with. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche definitely warned us of a world bereft of gods, where the divine, stripped from tradition, resurfaces in new, secular forms. What we see now is that for many, romance has filled that divine void. It's a pursuit that gives life meaning, structure, and even promises transcendence. In a sense, it is a new deity. So consider this. Religion is traditionally defined by a few key features like rituals, doctrines, and the promise of salvation. And romance in the modern form checks all of these boxes. The rituals, think about dating sites like Tinder and Bumble. People spend hours crafting their profiles, swiping, texting, and this behavior mimics the devotion one would give to religious ideas. The doctrines? Listen to popular songs or movies about love. You'll hear the doctrines of soulmates, destiny, the one, and salvation. That's found in the idea of romantic fulfillment. Once I find my true love, I will be complete. For many, love has become a transcendent force, lifting us out of the mundane. And like religion, it can be both beautiful and treacherous. The publishing industry has seen an enormous expansion in the romance genre. In the US alone, romance novels are $1 billion industry, and what's fascinating is the demographic shift. Traditionally, romance was geared towards women, but data shows an increasing number of young men reading romantic literature. These narratives shape expectations and often idealizing romance as a redemptive journey. According to the New York Times, over 40% of romantic readers fall under the age of 35, and this is a drastic shift from previous generations. For young men who may feel disillusioned or uncertain about relationships, these stories promise clarity and even salvation. But as Dostoevsky warned us in The Brothers Karamazov, we are creatures that crave answers. And when those answers don't come, it can lead to existential confusion. So what happens when we place romance on this kind of pedestal? Rainer Maria Rilke, in his letters to a young poet, cautioned that love is not simply about being together, it's about self-development and self-knowledge. But in the modern context, love is often idealized as this thing that will complete us. When romance becomes this kind of religion, disappointment becomes then inevitable. After all, no partner, no relationship can bear the weight of someone's entire sense of being and meaning. Nietzsche again cautioned against systems that distract us from the self. He called this the death of God, where in the absence of traditional beliefs, we substitute secular pursuits and sources of identity. And what's more distracting from the self than losing oneself in someone else? In a world that emphasizes self-improvement and finding purpose, modern romance has become a place to just hide from the self. Rilke also spoke of this in his letters to a young poet, urging people not to absorb themselves in others' lives, but to stand as guardians of solitude to truly know themselves before merging with other people. And with dating apps and algorithms, romantic culture has become big business. The apps incentivize constant swiping and keeping us hooked on the premise of an ideal match, just one profile away. This kind of commercialization is not so different from the way that religions are sometimes criticized for being profit-driven institutions. But it leaves us in a cycle of searching without fulfillment, especially for young people who might already feel lost. Philosopher Alain de Botton argues that we've bought into this myth of compatibility that no one else can actually live up to, leading many young people to feel perpetually unworthy or incomplete when they don't find that idealized form of love. So where do we go from here? How do we avoid making love our new god while still honoring it? Rilke encouraged an approach to love that wasn't about losing oneself, but instead about growing alongside someone else. Dostoevsky believed that true love came from a deep acceptance of flaws and not the pursuit of an ideal. The truth is, the healthiest form of love is not salvation, but companionship. It's about embracing someone's humanness and maybe embracing our own solitude within that process. Romance doesn't have to be a new religion, nor does it have to be an ultimate sense of purpose for our lives. It can be an enriching part of our life, but without defining us. If we can view it as a journey rather than a destination, as a process of discovery rather than salvation, we can find meaning in both the beauty and the imperfection of the human condition. Let's take this deeper. What beliefs do you personally hold about love? Think about it. Where did those beliefs initially come from? Did they arise from real experiences, or were they manufactured by the stories, movies, and cultural expectations? We often treat love as this universal truth, but perhaps it's more like a story that we write and then rewrite over time. Philosophers like Nietzsche might ask us how much of our idea about love is rooted in genuine connections versus a longing to fulfill societal ideals. He would challenge us. Are you pursuing love because it aligns with your personal values, or because it's what you believe you're supposed to want? Let's consider a deeper paradox. Rilke, in his letters, speaks of love as a balancing act between solitude and unity. He argues that true love can only flourish when both people have space for their individual growth. But modern romance often demands so much closeness that it threatens our actual freedom. It raises a question for all of us. Do we view love as something that limits us, something that we get lost in, or something that actually expands our horizons? Do you feel free in your romantic pursuits, or do you feel confined by them? And here's another question. How much of your identity is tied to romance? Dostoevsky, who wrote deeply about the human spirit, believed that our true nature is revealed in our intimate relationships. In The Brothers Karamazov again, he wrote about love as something that often reveals our readiness, our fears, and our insecurities. So what do your past relationships say about you? Not just about what you desire, but about what you fear, about what you feel is lacking within yourself. Romance can mirror our deepest insecurities, and if we let it, it can also lead us towards self-awareness. When we see love as a mirror rather than a fix-all, we can learn more about who we really are at the end of the day. Philosopher Alain de Botton once said that romanticism has led us to expect far more from our partners than they could ever provide us. We want love to be this storybook, but in reality it's so much messier. And this raises a tough question. Are you in love with love, or in love with a real person, flaws and all? When we romanticize our partners or potential partners, we often set them up for inevitable failure. How often do we fall for an idea instead of the reality that's right in front of us? And when that reality doesn't match our fantasy, who's responsible for the disillusionment? Rilke believed that love wasn't about finding the perfect partner, but about connecting with someone with whom you can grow with. He said a good marriage is one where each partner appoints the other to be the guardian of his solitude. Perhaps this is a perspective we can bring into our own lives. Love doesn't have to be perfect, it has to be real. And in reality, that means embracing both the joy and the struggles, idealism and imperfections. Can you find room for this kind of love in your life, a love that is not an escape, but a journey instead? So again, what stories about love are you carrying within yourself? Are they even serving you? Is there a space for love that's not about achieving an ideal, but about embracing mutual growth and vulnerability? Can you shift from seeing romance as a form of salvation to a process of shared growth? And most importantly, what kind of relationship would you allow yourself to be in with someone else? Ultimately, for better or worse, love is a complex. It can't easily be defined by the tropes we see in media or by the lofty ideals that we hold in our own minds. It's messy, it's human, and maybe that's the beauty of it. I just invite you to reflect on your own beliefs and expectations about romance, and remember, the most meaningful journey might not be about finding the perfect partner, but in learning what love can teach you about yourself. So let me ask you, why do you think we even turn to romantic literature and media to explore love when we have the ability to experience it here and now? It's an intriguing paradox, but romantic stories, they capture our imaginations and often paint love as something that's grand, pure, and transformative. But here's the reality. Love doesn't follow this scripted arc. In our lives, it isn't neatly resolved or bound by poetic dialogue. It's often messy, imperfect, and just full of unknowns. So ask yourself, why do you think we keep going back to these idealized portrayals? Is it to escape the imperfections of real relationships, or is it because we crave the beauty and emotions that these stories bring up for us? Philosopher Alain de Botton suggests that romance stories fulfill a longing to experience feelings that reality often makes very difficult. They allow us to immerse ourselves in a world where love is absolute and transcendent, without the limitations of the day-to-day life that we experience. But here's the challenge. Can the love that we seek in literature ever be actualized in real life? When we carry these idealized expectations into our relationships, are we setting ourselves up for disappointment? Can anyone even live up to the perfection we read about or see on screen? And if they can't, does that mean that we're destined for disillusionment, or is there another way? Maybe the answer lays in adjusting our lens. While romantic literature can give us a glimpse of what love could be, real life does offer something much richer. The chance to grow, to evolve, and experience love with all of its messiness and its depth. The poet Rilke reminds us that love is not about perfection. It's about patience, understanding, and presence. The love that we find in life may not have the flawless arcs of a novel, but it offers something much more valuable. A chance to be vulnerable, to learn, and to build something genuine. And how interesting is that? Even in the flawless arcs of a novel, we attempt to mirror the trepidations and disputes within our own conflicts in our real relationships, as if we're romanticizing the romance itself and even the troubles within it, and the troubles don't even seem to map onto the troubles that we see within literature. So how does that map onto our lives? We definitely need a better sense of understanding of how we can actually navigate true life situations without trying to repeat the patterns that we see in literature. And this works in the beauty and despair of romantic media. So perhaps we can ask ourselves this one final question. Can we enjoy the beauty of romance in literature while also embracing the unique and unpolished beauty of love in our own lives and in the love we have for ourselves? And can we find satisfaction not in the perfection of love, but in its honesty and resilience? At the end of the day, love in real life might not be as scripted, but it is ours, and that's the most real. Remember, the best stories are the ones that we do live. These questions challenge us to balance the allure of an idealized romance with the richness of real-life connection, allowing room for both to inspire us from literature and the acceptance of one's love of their own imperfect beauty, as love is not something to seek, but it's something to embrace.